right?
Yep, we're good.
I think if you had anywhere else, that would have been an issue. But because you're chair, you're fine.
That works. All right, let's jump to. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start with a pledge of allegiance. Let's see. Oh. Lauren, if you could come forward, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
Thank you, Lauren. That's appreciated. Looks like we have a full quorum this evening. Let's start with a quick note. Are there any conflicts of interest?
Nope.
Okay. So I will declare I have a conflict of interest on items 5.1 and 5.2, so I will not be voting on those items. Well, and as chair, I don't vote anyway, but I'll still declare that as part of the meeting. Let's jump to item 3.4, approval of minutes from August 7th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for August 7th.
Have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's jump to administrative items. Let's go with item 4.1, and this will be presented by, let's see, by Clint.
All right. Well, good evening. This first application is a request that we've been working on with the applicant for quite some time now. There's been a lot of information that we've needed that they've provided, and so it is now ready for the Planning Commission's consideration. So this is the Malibu Laguna subdivision, and it, if this works now, hopefully. On. Okay. So this is a vicinity map of where that application takes place. It's just next to the MDAs that we were discussing in the work session meeting, kind of in the southern part of the city, up in the foothills against Camp Williams. This is a little closer representation of where where the subdivision takes place. It's about 822 acres. The proposal is for 65 single-family lots. They have provided off-site improvements, easements, and access documents to make way for the subdivision. They've met all the requirements of the zoning ordinance to move forward with their applications as well. All these lots, there's no rezones as part of this. They all will take place in the FR 2.5 zone, which means that the minimum lot size can be 2.5 acres. And that also does include the construction of 2 water tanks that will hopefully light up, maybe not. Not moving. Okay, there we go. So these are the considerations that we're looking at tonight, our engineering standards and then the zoning ordinance. In terms of the engineering review, so the project is outside of the current water service availability. There are, as was mentioned in the work session meeting, there are plans for 2 new water tanks to be constructed for zones 2 and 3 as part of the MDAs that are taking place. The water tank for zone 3 will supply water to some of the lower lots on this application, but as shown here, the zones go from 3 to 8. So it will be a process to get all of the water in place for this subdivision to take place. One of the provisions for, or considerations for approval is that no plat can be recorded until water service is secured, and that's part of the requirements of the preliminary plats. In terms of preliminary plat, requirements, just to continue that conversation. So the accesses will largely be built by others. The plans provided, there have been plans provided by the applicant as required for off-site improvements to show the road grading and how they can be constructed. The applicant has acquired easements for access across all the other private property to accommodate the subdivision. And then along with those roads, other services and utilities will be part of those areas. In terms of zoning compliance as well, the lot width has been met except for on 5 lots. And there's some minor adjustments. These are very large lots, so those adjustments should be easily made to accommodate the zoning requirement of 250 feet. All the slopes and the grading and utilities have been provided for as well, as I stated. Some of these are just representations of those plans, showing the road grading, some of the site grading, the hillside elements that where homes can and cannot be constructed. And then in terms of the FR 2.5 ordinance and the hillside overlay, so those two, the FR 2.5 and the hillside are very similar in what they require. The FR 2.5 zone is more geared towards when development takes place in terms of a subdivision, and the hillside overlay is almost more applicable during this actual site construction. It talks about, defensible space. It talks about how much of the site can be disturbed, those kinds of things. So those are things that will be looked at as part of the building permit application process. But the FR 2.5 does address some of the subdivision concerns. As we've looked through these with what the applicant has provided, this is just an example of the work that the applicant has done to show some of the site grading on site. Those, obviously, the redder slopes are more undevelopable. Those are the steeper slopes shown. So by and large, most of these requirements have been met. The 3 that we're just going to highlight and talk about are the sensitive lands, landscaping, and then access and circulation. So in terms of the sensitive lands, the applicant has worked with staff, or what we're asking the applicant to do is they provided this document here, which shows kind of the vegetation layer, and it's an aerial view, of course. You can see where the vegetated areas are. There's some other elements like springs or creeks, those kinds of things that need to be shown on the plat as well, and we can work through that with the applicant during the final plat process. And then in terms of landscaping and natural vegetation, we just want to make sure that we get a landscape plan for the dedicated right-of-way to show, park strip improvements or just the dedication improvements as the project takes place. The next consideration is just for access and circulation. As part of the FR 2.5 zone, there is a requirement for pedestrian access to take place. In the earlier plans, it showed a sidewalk or an asphalt trail on both sides of the street. And in the later plans, for some reason, that access was taken off. So we're just asking the requirement would be to replace that asphalt path so it takes place on both sides of the dedicated right-of-way. That being said, we have, like I mentioned, we have worked with the applicant very closely for a long time, and we do recommend approval with the conditions that we feel meets ordinance compliance. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer what I can. The applicant is also here and I'm sure would like to address.
Is there a trail system, like kind of what we saw earlier for this area?
As part of the subdivision process, they don't have to provide a trail system, but there's not one being proposed. In terms of the FR 2.5 zone, it does talk about recreation, and developing the subdivision would provide some more opportunities for the city to go in and make those trail connections, or to create new trail connections within that subdivision, and based off of the spine road that goes through the neighborhood.
Perfect, thank you.
Did you say that they have secured the accesses to this property?
Yeah, they've worked over a good period of time to secure all the And that's part of, all the documentation was included in your packet that shows, whenever they go over private property, they have an agreement, a contract, a map in place to show how all of these accesses take place so that they have secured those rights to the development.
And what was the reasoning behind having pedestrian infrastructure on both sides of the road?
It's just a requirement from the FR 2.5 zone.
Okay.
The pedestrian access should be provided, right?
Okay.
Like I mentioned, the applicant is here, and I'm sure he would like
I was
to.
going to say, are there any further questions for Clint? Well, then let's open the mic up for the applicant, if the applicant would like to come forward. Please state your name for the record and provide any additional information.
Yeah, hi, John Lindsley, assigned agent for the development. Appreciate you guys' time taking a look at our application. We've worked painstakingly for over 4 years on the entitlement process for this land up here. We've gone through a lot of different scenarios. We've done a lot for feasibility studies. We've worked quite a bit on this project. So we appreciate the opportunity to come before you with a conventional plan that follows an FR 2.5 and is compliant with all ordinances that we can see. We're going to follow that pretty much to the T, and we're not asking for anything above than what's conventional. I'm welcome to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Can you talk a little bit about the buffer against Camp Williams? Just curious.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you talk about the buffer against Camp Williams? Just,
The buffering of Camp Williams?
yeah,
If you're talking about the House bill that was recently passed?
yeah,
It doesn't apply to this project. Our application was prior to that.
okay. Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions. Yeah, you guys we've seen this a couple times, so.
Yeah, I would imagine it's not
Yeah.
new. Yeah, we've done
Some
quite a bit.
iterations, yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, we proposed a much higher density because we
Yeah.
do feel that it's warranting for utility infrastructure and costs in this area. We've worked with council. We've offered many different amenities in this area. We've offered quite a bit. All of those things were turned down. And so we came back with a conventional plan, and that is where we're at today.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Okay, this item as an administrative is open for public comment. Or we'll have public comment. I will read the procedure and policy for that before I open that. The purpose of the public comment policy is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to the deputy city recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. This policy applies to all public hearings. With that, I will open the meeting for public comment. Are there any comments online? Seeing no one coming forth for public comment. Do we have a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion by Heather, second by Brody.
Yep.
Let's see, do I have to roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Public comment is closed. Let's open this for discussion with the commission.
Pretty straightforward to me,
Yeah, same.
as long as they have the accesses.
Yeah, that was my only concern, is having both accesses, and what happens if one of the accesses doesn't go through or something? How could that impact this?
I think we could easily put that in a requirement. Sounds like they've already met it, but as a belt and suspenders approach.
So one of the requirements up on the screen now, if they only obtain one access, they can only develop 30 lots. That's just by fire code. So they'd be limited to that unless they get the second, then they could develop the rest of them.
Is there any appeal to that, though?
Sorry?
Is there any appeal to that? Any appeal process? to
To go
have-
beyond 30?
Yeah,
Not to a fire
To
code.
restrict them further or to allow them more?
To go more than 30.
No, that's, fire code would just limit it to 30 lots.
Isn't there another code reference just on the length of it? Of a giant dead-end cul-de-sac?
I thought it was 400, but
Maybe somebody, one of the staff members can speak to that, just so, because I think I personally would be comfortable if we at least put something in reference.
It is allowed to go to 400 feet, but in the hillside overlay, I think it's allowed to extend to 650. So it would fall underneath the hillside overlay code. And so that'd be the max allowable length. So if you have 250-foot frontages, you can see how far you'd get. Not very far. The option is there can be a turnaround, a hammerhead intermediate, and the fire marshal has allowed that before. So you can go a little bit longer if you have hammerheads in between lot lines. And so that's how we've extended them longer before to get up to the number of lots allowable. But it still would be allowed to be 30. It's fire code, and I think we have a city ordinance on that too, or it's in the engineering standard, one of the two.
But even though the development agreements we were talking about earlier haven't been achieved, if those don't happen, which I'm not saying they aren't, this has to stand by itself, right?
Yep.
Isn't that a giant cul-de-sac from wherever you connect to get to this property?
Yeah.
And doesn't that
so
make it not,
those road widths, that's where we've worked with the fire marshal in the past. One specific one I remember was Miller Crossing Drive when it was built. We had them build it a little extra wide, and the fire marshal required that so they could build subdivisions and not have to build it all the way through the main street. So that's the way they've been able to work around that with the fire marshal in the past. We get a recommendation from the fire marshal, and then we bring that and accept that if the fire marshal's okay with it. The big concern with the fire marshal in this area, obviously, is the hillside interface, the urban interface. And so there might not be as much lenience from the fire marshal in this case because of the urban interface and the fire concern, evacuation concerns. But
does
they
the
do have
fire
the
marshal
easement.
sign the plat? I can't remember.
The fire marshal does not sign the plat, but they sign any building permit.
Gotcha.
Cool. Thanks, Blake.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve item 4.1, consideration of the preliminary plat for the Malibu Laguna subdivision with staff's recommendations.
We have a motion by Brody,
I'll second.
second by Andy.
Darren.
Sorry, Daryl. Was that roll call vote? Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Brody?
Yes.
With that, the motion is approved. Okay, let's move on to, oh, yes. Oh, I do need to sit out of the room? Okay,
Have to elect a chair.
okay,
Oh, so Adam,
perfect.
Second.
I second Adam to sit as chair.
Wait, who made the motion?
I make a motion to have
Okay.
Adam sit as chair.
And then I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
See you, Jackson.
Adam's okay with that.
I don't care, it's fine. All right, we'll get going on item 5.2. I don't know who is presenting 5.2.
5.1.
Blake, over to you.
Sorry, I just got handed a check from a developer, but it wasn't for me, it was for the city. It's for an MDA application coming in for Rosecrest, surprise, surprise. Okay. In an unrelated item. I was confused if I was getting a check. So this is proposed sports entertainment mixed-use overlay zone text amendment. Just what you're getting asked of tonight is a recommendation for approval or denial, whatever you want to do, for a proposed text amendment to Chapter 10-15, Article E, SEMU overlay zone. So just a little bit of background on this. This was created in 2017 when RSL was coming into town. So because of that, the purpose was pretty specific to what RSL was trying to accomplish. And the specific requirements for the zone to actually be able to apply it somewhere were super specific, like a 5,000 people viewing, accommodate that many people, 100 acres. As we've moved along, oh, and then on the end, there were some sign allowances. And so if you drive down Mountain View Corridor, you see the big signs at along RSL. That code allowed for those signs to go in. Since then, we've approved a sign ordinance for signage along Mountain View Corridor, which we're keeping the requirement in here, proposing to keep it in, but only if you have a 5,000 seat stadium. So, and then you can comply with the current sign ordinance along Mountain View Corridor if this zone gets approved along that road. So with the proposal, we're trying to introduce a little bit more flexibility in the sports entertainment mixed use overlay. Council has provided staff with direction that we want to incorporate more of this into the city. We want to invite tourists to come in for tournaments and things of that nature. And then we also want to put a little more flexibility in there so that there can be some complementary uses besides just a sports venue. So the summary of the amendment that was in the packet is we identified specific permitted uses. And one thing that's come up to us since we wrote that staff report and posted it was there might be an interest, if you so desire, to include an allowance for a conditional use, or I guess we call it an accessory use for personal care services. So if there's, say, a basketball training facility and they want to have a, I don't know, physical therapy or something inside of the facility and they want to have a clinic, they could put that in there, but it has to be accessory because we didn't want to have like nail salons and sports clips and things like that in the area, just standalone. So there's that one thing that is not in the recommendations from the staff in the report, would be accessory use for personal care services. And then we identified some specific development standards. We kind of wanted to be able to make things work for the sports entertainment uses, but not make it so onerous that it was totally unfeasible for them to build something. And then there were some specific conditions for, I guess we didn't create specific conditions for signs. We left them in there. But the specific conditions that I wanted to talk about were if the height requirement or allowances that were proposed in this zone. So it's proposed that you can build up to 60 feet tall as a permitted use, but to go higher than that, and for the purpose of that would be maybe a cover for a dome for a baseball field or a football field or soccer field or something. You could go up to 125 feet, but it's got to be a conditional use and come back to the Planning Commission. And then there's some allowance for material because you can't put cladding or anything on a dome. So there'd be some allowance there. So that's the kind of the summary of the proposed text amendment. And so this is on for a public hearing tonight. So, and then the process going forward would be, we're here to answer any questions. We also have another item following this that would apply this to a specific piece of land in the city. I didn't put them together for the presentation, but if this moves forward, we'll move forward with that item. If this doesn't move forward, we'll still move forward with that item, but we'll see where that goes. And then these both will be a recommendation to City Council because they're both legislative items. So anyway, I'll answer questions now, or if you want to do the hearing first, I'll answer them after.
I have a question. Just on the overlay zone, I read it had some specific, I guess, language saying Mountain View. Is there other areas that you would open this up to besides just on Mountain View Corridor?
There could be other areas. Currently, we're only talking about that. Can you remind me where that's at in that text? Maybe that's something else we'd want to amend.
I think it's talking more about signage, probably.
Was it for the signage?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, the signage I didn't want to mess with. I only included a line in there that said you can only get the additional signage allowance if you have a 5,000 seat stadium.
Oh, okay, okay.
Which is pretty specific, because with
Yeah.
the new code for the Mountain View corridor signage that was passed, I think, last year,
Mm-hmm,
I didn't want to allow any additional large signs on the road.
okay.
So the exact location is to be determined if this gets approved, is what I'm hearing?
Sorry.
Sorry, the exact location is to be determined if this gets approved.
This would just be the text,
Okay.
and then
Then we'll worry about
it could
the
get
location.
applied anywhere in the city,
Okay.
as long as it met the criteria.
Cool. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Blake. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Seeing limited participation, we'll close. Is there anyone on? Okay, we'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Heather and a second by
I'll second.
Preston. Call for a vote. This is everybody for? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go. The public hearing's closed. All right, is there more discussion, or do we have a motion?
So I'm wondering, due to the description, is it 2 acres or is it 5 acres? Because it seemed to be not quite definite which one you're asking for.
So the minimum acreage requirement in the text should say 5 acres.
Okay.
And so
So in the description, it said 5, but you could go to 2.
you could, I mean, if the commission wants to recommend a smaller acreage, you could.
Right.
The intention in the code that was drafted was 5.
I think that makes sense. I think going smaller too, I think about all the tournaments and things that I go to with my daughters, and parking is always a hassle. And if you don't have the square footage, if you have any kind of tournament at all, whether it's volleyball, basketball, whatever, there's never enough parking because everyone drives by themselves. So
Hey, Blake, how big is the pickleball acreage, do you know?
Oh, I don't know that off the top of my head. It's probably on the smaller end of 2 or 3.
Okay.
yeah, I think it was probably like 3.5 or something like that.
But they also are benefiting from a shared parking agreement with the Anthem development.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other topics to discuss? Or changes for staff, or recommendations? Preston?
I'm ready to make a recommendation.
Okay.
Or a motion, or whatever it is. A recommendation to recommend approval for the proposed text amendment.
Did they want to add accessory use for?
Yeah, and include accessory use as outlined for, how was it, how do you want it worded?
Personal care services as an
personal care
accessory use
service.
to a primary permitted use.
Yes, that.
Primary permitted use.
We have a motion.
Recommendation to the city council for proposed text amendment to chapter 10 through 15.
I'll second.
Motion by Preston, second by Heather. Call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Brody?
Yes.
That passes. We'll move on to item 5.3.
Following up on that one. So this is the request, and the city's the applicant on this one as well. This is for the north of Miller Crossing area, which we'll show on a map here, to have
Sorry, 5.2.
that SEMU overlay zone applied to it. So that's the request here, is should the planning commission recommend approval to apply that SEMU overlay zone to the north of Miller Crossing area. So this is the location. It's south of Anthem, north of the Auto Mall. As we were negotiating, city council and staff and the developer of this area was not covered underneath the development agreement when the Auto Mall was created. So this area only has zoning for the AMSD applied to it, but no MDA. It's bounded by the creek on the north. Miller Crossing Drive is being constructed, anticipated to be completed by the end of October. And the whole site is approximately 17 acres. You can see a couple of pieces that were left off up on the end. The one was one that was acquired by the city from UDOT, and there's some requirements that we got that for roadway purposes. If we want to use it, incorporate it into this, we'd have to pay the fair market value for that property. Another piece is on, the piece on the very north end is between the creek and this proposed area, is owned by another developer, and we didn't get an affidavit from them, so we did not include that in this proposal. The 12.33 acres, it's under contract with the Auto Mall developer, Harriman 73 Partners. And then there are a little bit over 4.5 acres right along Main Street and the creek that the city has an agreement with MLM Holdings that was kind of put in place before all of this was, it was kind of the impetus to do this sports entertainment mixed-use overlay zone. Mountain View Corridor will provide access to Miller Crossing, and then you can enter off of Anthem Park Boulevard. So the site has really good access and visibility. And then there's obviously supporting development on the north with pickleball and the Anthem development, the hotel that's coming in. And then on the south, we have Mountain View Plaza, Aaron Osmond's project, and that's coming along. So good supporting development to support this sports entertainment mixed-use overlay area and be supported by it. This is the concept plan. Nothing here is really set in stone, but just kind of an idea what we're looking at, what our development partners are looking at putting in here. We have baseball over on the Harriman Main Street side. We have some basketball training facility off Miller Crossing Drive in the middle, potential hotel, restaurant, recreation area, kind of a indoor entertainment. And so those are the uses that we've listed on the right here, and just kind of a general map showing what could go in this. And potentially some signage out on Mountain View Corridor. So similar to the last item, this one's on for public hearing tonight. We're here to answer any questions before or after, and then this would be a recommendation to the council for applying the zone that you just voted on to this property. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or Sandra would be happy to answer them too.
So I have a question. A hotel, does that fall within the zone that we just adjusted?
Yes, that was one of the permitted uses.
That was one of the permitted uses, was a hotel.
Is the height, is there a specific requirement for, because I think we made the height taller in that zone, the overlay zone? Does that mean it can go taller than other hotels that we've?
So the SEMU overlay zone, if applied here, would allow them to go up to 60 feet permitted and 125 feet through conditional use. But that's more structured. I mean, this would all fall underneath that, but it would totally be up to the planning commission whether you'd allow them to go that high. For reference, I think, what did we allow on the hotel in Anthem? I think it was 50 feet. That was handled, because that went above what was allowed in the C2, so we permitted that through the MDA amendment.
Gotcha.
Question, recognizing this is still pretty early in the process, is there any planned connectivity over the Midas Creek to connect that business sector with this area?
There are 2 footbridges planned, but
Footbridges.
no vehicle.
Okay.
There's one existing right now that we have to relocate with this project.
Is there a trail system down there too, right?
The trail runs along the south side of Midas Creek,
Okay.
so the bridges cross in.
Gotcha.
There's a plan with the agreement with MLM Holdings. There's going to be a trailhead that required to be constructed right along Midas Creek and Main Street. So there'd be a trailhead that could kind of share parking with all of this as well, and then you could access the trail.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing?
I have one, and maybe it's too early, but will the detention basin be landscaped or?
So there have been discussions, it would be required to be landscaped if it stays an open air pond. There's also been discussions that we may put it underground to utilize it for parking, and then the city would keep an easement over it and maintain the pond, and then the owner would maintain the parking lot. So there's some options there, but yes, if it's open, it can be reconfigured and run linearly along the trail system, so it could provide kind of a buffer between the parking lot and the trail, or become parking lot with underneath, so, great question.
Any more comments, questions? All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on item 5.2. None? Do we have any on electronically? All right, we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Heather.
I'll second.
All right, I'll call, I don't know why I can't speak today. Roll call for everyone? All in favor? There we go, that's the word I was looking for.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the public hearing's closed. Do we have any more discussion, or are we ready to make a motion?
I love it. I'm ready to make a motion if no one has a comment.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to recommend approval to the city council
5.2.
of item 5.2. With the zoning map to apply the SEMU overlay zone to the 16.98 acre area identified as North Miller Crossing.
I'll second.
Preston made the motion, Heather made the second. We will do a vote. Brody?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
That motion is approved. So being that Jackson now can come back in the room, but we will go ahead and, I don't believe, is there any more commission comments or chair comments? I don't have any. All right, future meetings, our next city council is on September 25th, 2024. Next planning commission is on October 2nd, 2024. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Heather, second by Brody.
Aye.
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 All in favor. Aye in favor. Thank you, everybody. Next time Heather does it. Or you at least know you're gonna get it before.